I'm Jim Fidel. I'm with Carolina Training and Assessments. Let's talk about teamwork. Now, I get teamwork is one of those really overdone topics, especially nowadays. And if you're like me, you read articles that will give you lists of recommendations on how to make teamwork better in your organization. The problem is that the lists include things like the 2 pizza rule for meetings to limit the number of people who attend, or casual meeting Friday, whatever that means, or one that was labeled really innovative, make communication two-way. The problem is that the recommendations really don't go after what teamwork is really all about. I think what they're doing is going after building camaraderie with your teams, but that's very different than teamwork. You see, camaraderie doesn't always translate into higher performing teams, and ultimately that's where we want to go. And so I want to share a framework with you that I think is much more effective when it comes to building teamwork. And I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I believe teamwork is your greatest competitive advantage. You see, your competition can duplicate your equipment, your materials, your process, your technology. They can't duplicate your teams. And so teamwork truly does become your greatest competitive advantage. One of the best frameworks that I've seen for building teamwork is in a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and it's written by Patrick Lencioni. I'm a huge fan of Lencioni's work because it's practical, it makes sense, you can take it and apply it into your everyday work life. But it always takes work and effort to make it happen. But that's okay, it's worth it. In the book, Patrick Lencioni describes the 5 dysfunctions that teams generally exhibit that prevent them from being cohesive and delivering high performance results. And Lencioni teamed up with the John Wiley & Sons organization to create a program called the 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team, which is effectively taking those dysfunctions and saying, let's not focus on the negatives or the dysfunctions, but let's focus in on the things that actually can be done to grow teamwork. And that's what I'd like to talk about. The 5 behaviors of a cohesive team start with building trust. Trust is the foundation. Now the key is we're not talking about what Lencioni describes as predictive trust. We're talking about what he describes as vulnerability-based trust. You see, we can work with somebody for a period of time and develop predictive trust. So we kind of know what's going to happen with that person. We know how they're going to behave. We know how they're going to handle situations. That's predictive trust. And that's not the kind of trust that we're talking about when we talk about building a cohesive team. We're talking about vulnerability-based trust. Now, I'd like you to participate in a short activity. This is one of the things that we do in our Leadership Academy when we talk about teamwork and building trust. And we'll have people do this exercise. Think about the one person in your life with whom you have the strongest relationship, the highest level of trust. It can be a parent, it can be a sibling, child, significant other. It doesn't matter who the person is, just have somebody in mind. Then think about the characteristics that person demonstrates that makes the relationship so strong and the trust level so high. Now, if you're actually doing this and you're jotting down or thinking about those characteristics, what we tend to see from people is things like, I can count on them, they're very reliable, they're honest, they don't judge me, they always put my interests first, they'll hold me accountable when I'm doing something wrong, they share my interests. We get those kinds of descriptions around this one person. If you look at those characteristics, they tend to fall out into 2 different categories. Things like they're reliable, they are consistent, I know what I'm going to get from them. Those things are the predictive-based trust that we talked about. It's the other things. They're honest, they have my back, there's no judgment, they hold me accountable, they'll always put my interests first. Those are the things that are vulnerability-based trust. And both components are important as we build strong relationships with our coworkers and our employees. Now, let's talk about the work environment. If you're like most people, you spend your time talking about the resume stuff, the things that you know, your experience, your knowledge of the job. But how much time do you spend building vulnerability-based trust with your coworkers, demonstrating to them that you're not going to judge them, that you'll always have their back, that you'll always be honest with them? Those are the things that build vulnerability-based trust, and it's the foundation for any kind of effective team that we want to have in our workplace. One way you'll know if you're building vulnerability-based trust in your organization is when you start to hear people say things like, "I'm sorry, I messed up, I need help." Those are the things that are said between two people or between a person and a group of people when there's vulnerability-based trust. It's the lack of judgment. It's not personal. It's around wanting to make sure that our teammates are successful. When we hear those types of things happening, we know that we're building vulnerability-based trust. And it's so important to start there. So rather than focusing in on your next bowling night or your next virtual Zoom wine night with your teams, focus on the things that really matter toward building your team's cohesion. Focus on establishing that you're not going to be judgmental, that you are going to be honest, that you share values, that you're always going to have their best interests at heart. Those are the things that will establish a foundation of trust that's needed to build the cohesive team that you're looking for in your environment. At Carolina Training and Assessments, we're very proud to be authorized partners for the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. Check us out at carolinatrainingandassessments.com and see how we can help you build more effective and more cohesive teams in your workplace. I'm Jim Fidel. Thanks for listening.